Good morning and welcome back to the Kabbalah of Chanukah. We are actually today, the first day of Hanukkah. So let me wish everyone a happy Hanukkah. And I'll depart from what I was doing until now. And instead of reading the discourse, I'll give a little synopsis. Because we don't have, we have a bar mitzvah this morning. We have to start on time. We have more or less like a half hour right now. The story of Hanukkah is is very different than all the other holidays in the Jewish calendar. It's different in the sense that, like for example, Purim, we all know that this was Purim, they tried to kill the Jewish people, destroy them, men, women, and children in one day by Haman and his people. And the Jewish people won. They were victorious over their enemies, and they were saved. Hashem provided a miracle, and as a result, we celebrate Purim with great celebration, with a lot of food and a lot of giving food to others, and tzedakah and charity, and festive meals, and so on and so forth. Hanukkah is a very different type of holiday. There are no meals, and there are no festive things like that. It's more about light. It's a more spiritual celebration in the sense that we light Hanukkah candles. So I would like to elaborate today on the idea of oil. We know that the Greeks, we read in the Al Hanisim prayer, when the Greeks went to, they rose up against the Jewish people, they went and ransacked the Beis HaMikdash, and they established over there the statue of Zeus, the idol, and they defiled the whole place. And they had defiled all the oil that was present. They had a little chamber in the Beis HaMikdash that was known as the chamber of the oil, where they kept all the oil for the menorah and for other things. And they went, I guess, into that room and wherever else they can find, and they defiled all the oil. And defiled oil is no good. But when the Jewish people came back to the Beis HaMikdash, and when they won the war and they came back to get rid of all the mess that the Greeks had made, they had they found that all the oil had been defiled, but there was one little jar or bottle or whatever, cruse of oil, that was still sealed with the special high priest seal, which indicated that it was not defiled, and they were able to use that oil for the first day of the menorah lighting, but the miracle happened that it lasted for 8 days. Why 8 days? Why 8 days, not 7, not 9? What's the 8 days? So it's a simple practical matter. It takes 8 days to produce oil back then. It took 8 days till they got new oil. So as long as God waited till they got the new good pure oil, and when they got the new pure oil, the oil burnt out, the original oil burnt. That 1 day's supply finished, and that was an 8-day supply. That's why the rabbis made the miracle, made the holiday of Hanukkah for 8 days. Now, the question is, what did the Greeks really want? We all know, we spoke about it many times, what they really wanted was to abolish Judaism. Right? We read that in the Al Hanisim prayer, the special Hanukkah prayer. They wanted to abolish Judaism, which means that if you're going to go into the temple, what was the most important thing, or item, or vessel, symbol, that the Greeks wanted to do away with would be the menorah, because the menorah was the idea of light, light represents Torah, mitzvahs. If they're going to do away with something, they're going to do away with the menorah. That's the most important thing they want to get rid of. The menorah brings light to the world. It says that the Beis Hamikdash windows were made in a way. Usually when you build a house and the reason you put windows is for light. So how would you make light? If you want to build windows, if you want more light to get into the house, you'll make the window like this. This is in, this is outside, right? So you make a little window, but then you make the wall should go this way so much more light gets in, right? That's the way you would do it. If there's thick walls, right? So that's how usually they did it those days. The opening was small because they couldn't afford to make such a big opening. But they made it where it went in so the light spread indoors, right? That's how it was done. The Beis Hamikdash was just the opposite. The Beis Hamikdash, the opening was here and it went this way, to the outside. And the reason Beis Shlomo HaMelech made it that way, Solomon made it that way because the light of the Beis Hamikdash was meant to. The Beis Hamikdash exported light to the world. The holiness of the Beis Hamikdash was exported to the whole world. So the light of the menorah was supposed to shine outward instead of the windows were to bring the light of the inside to the outside rather than the outside to the inside. You follow? In other words, the menorah represented the symbol of Judaism. So naturally the Greeks who fought Judaism, wanted to get rid of Judaism, would get rid of the menorah, would try their best to do away with, not allow the Jews to make it impossible for them to light the menorah. What would you do if you were a Greek and wanted to go in and make sure the Jews don't light up the menorah ever again? It's very simple. You go into the chamber of the oil, you take all the jars, and you pour it out. You pour it down a drain and you get rid of it. So they don't have oil. But that's not what the Greeks did. They touched the oil, they defiled the oil. What does it mean that they defiled the oil? They touched it. That's all they had to do is handle it.
Impure.
And make it impure. And the question is, why did they do that? You can still if you want to, the Jews, halachically, you were allowed to light the menorah with impure oil if you don't have any other? Yeah. The Jews could use that oil if they really needed to, if there was no other. That's the halacha. So why did the Greeks, who knew something about Judaism and knew that this oil could be used, why didn't they get rid of the oil? It would be much more effective had they taken all the jars and just pour them out on the drain and get rid of it. So there's no oil to use. Instead, they just defiled it. They handled it and left it there. That's question number one. Question number two is, why did they leave this cruse? This one cruse of oil they didn't touch, they didn't handle. Why didn't they break open the seal and get rid of that also? So some will say, well, they didn't see it. It was hidden somewhere on the ground or something. But what does that mean? The Kohen Gadol dug a hole on the ground and put a jar of oil on the ground? I mean, it's highly unlikely that that's what happened. There was something about that one cruse that they didn't handle for some reason. The Jews found it. Well, it's possible that it was hidden and they didn't see it, but it's more likely that there's something more about that cruse that kept the Greeks away from it. So I want to answer these two questions today and explain to you the power of oil. So here's what it is. We have a blank paper. I thought they were all blank, but okay. It's okay. The way it works is like this. That's blank. That's fine, I have. Let's talk about the neshama for a little bit. The Jewish neshama. Anyone that learned Hasidus knows a little bit about the neshama, the Jewish soul. The Jewish soul has basically three parts to it. It has the functional part, there's 5 levels to the soul, to be more precise. The 5 levels are Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama, Chaya, Yechida. But these 3 parts of the soul, I would divide in these 5. I would divide in 3. Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama as one unit, Chaya, and then Yechida. What are these 3 levels? So here's what it is. Nefesh is the lowest. Ruach, Neshama, Chaya, and Yechida. So I'm going to divide it into 3. These 3 are 1, Chaya and Yechida. What are the differences between these? Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama is the intellect of the soul, is Neshama. Ruach is the emotions of the soul, and Nefesh is the actions of the soul. Those are the 3 parts of Neshama that are enclosed in our body and allow us to function as a Jew. And that is the part of the Neshama that we access on a daily basis. That's revealed in us on a daily basis. Now, to be sure, these 3 levels could also be completely concealed, as it is by many. But a Jew that's behaving as a Jew, that's in touch with his Judaism, he's basically functioning by these 3, as a result of these 3 levels of the soul, the lowest 3. Higher than that is Chaya. Chaya is where a Jew gets his faith. He said, Neshama, I said, was intellect. Chaya is super rational. It's beyond the intellect, it's faith. What's Yechida? Yechida is the essence of the soul. Now let's discuss this a little bit, because it's quite interesting. Let's talk about a relationship between a parent and a child, or a husband and a wife. A husband and a wife, yeah? They love each other? Certainly. Parent and a child, they love each other. The mother makes breakfast for the kids every day, sends them off to school. It's up at night with the little babies, and just, it's life as usual. Cleans the house, gets angry, gets upset, disciplines the children when they need to be disciplined. Rewards them when they should be rewarded. It's, it's life as usual. They love their kids. Husband and wife. Life as usual is, husband comes home, brings a check, the wife brings her a check, she cooks the meals if she's a good cook, and does the household things, and the husband helps, whatever, the regular life as on a regular Wednesday. There's quite a fine, a love that's quite palpable, that's obvious, that's visible. Person walks into this house, you can see that this husband and wife are getting along quite well, and there's a love in between them, and they're very, very good friends, very good husband and wife. But then there are times, so before then there are times. So on the regular Wednesday, the part of this relationship between the parents and the children, the husband and wife, that's revealed is the basic part, the lowest part, the functional part. They don't need to access this higher level of the relationship. There's no need. They think alike, they feel for each other, they act for each other. Intellect, emotion, and action. It's all wonderful. But then there are times in a relationship where you need more. The regular daily that part of the relationship, of the soul of this relationship, is not enough to keep it going. When would that be? For example, when there's a crisis, and one did something very, very bad to the other. They did something very nasty to each other. Really nasty. or a parent and a child. The child is, for example, a parent and a child. Child is not giving his parents nachas. He's causing them only, tzoros, giving them only nothing but problems. He's on drugs and he's a troublemaker, and it's just bad. And he's just not doing what he has to do. So they're very upset. It comes to the point where they have to take real serious action. So they fall away from each other. But then they have a wedding. A child's getting married. So all the kids come to the wedding, right? By the wedding, they all dance. They all have a celebrating together. Does the father or the mother select which child they're going to dance with? The one that gives them nachas, they're going to dance more hours. And the one that doesn't give them nachas, they're going to dance less hours. Is that the way it works at a wedding when you're celebrating your children's wedding? No. Children are children at the end of the day. By a wedding, you look beyond all those things. Those things don't play a role. Because at a wedding, there's a higher level of the relationship that's revealed. And therefore, the regular things that get in the way of the lower levels of the soul of this relationship don't play a role when the higher level of this relationship is accessed, when that's revealed. But now let's take it a step further. Then there's the essence of the relationship. For example, when a mother or a father sees that his child is kidnapped, or someone's holding them up with a gun.
God forbid.
God forbid. And now the question becomes your life or their life. So what does a father do, a healthy father? He goes in front of the child and takes the bullet for him and lets the child live. Or if your child is hit by a car and is under a car, you lift up the car, somehow you get strength. I've heard stories like that. What happens then? Something happens to the person that he goes even beyond chaya, beyond that level. The essence of the relationship between parent and child is revealed at that moment. And he takes the bullet and lets the child, dies for his child. That's the essence. How does this relate to Hashem? In Kabbalah it discusses there's three types of liquids in this world. There's water, there's juice, and there's oil. Right? Those are the three liquids there are. Water is the most accessible, the easiest. It's available, there's a lot of it, you can get it easy. Juice, how do you get juice? You have to take an orange, you have to squeeze it. You have to take a grape, and you have to squeeze it. It's not that easy to get juice. You got to do something. You got to go and squeeze out the grape. You get the orange grape juice, wine. So, then there's a third type of liquid, and that is oil. How do you get oil? Oil is very hard to come by because you have to not only squeeze an olive. You ain't going to get anything by squeezing an olive. You literally have to crush that olive. You have to break it down. You have to crush it till the little bit of oil comes out. That's why oil is so precious. Now, these three liquids represent the three parts of the neshama. It says nefesh, ruach, and neshama, the three lowest parts of the soul are the water of the neshama. That's the easiest to access. That's the part that we access on a regular day, on a regular basis. We act Jewish. It's the part that functions within our body automatically. It's available, it's revealed. That's what makes us tick as a Jew. But sometimes that's not enough to be committed, because sometimes you have a crisis in your life, in your Jewish life. So then you have to rely on your chaya, your faith. When things are not going well as a Jew and you're challenged, For example, you have a tough boss who says you're not going home, you're not getting off on a Pesach that falls on a Tuesday. And you have to now stand up to him and say, okay, if you don't give me off, I'm taking off, and even if it means I'm losing my job. How easy is that? It's not so easy. For that, you have to dig deeper into your neshama to access a higher level of commitment to Hashem to be able to take such a stand. For that, you have to access your faith in God. I have faith in God, and that's it. There's no if what's about it. I don't work on Yom Tov. I don't work on the holidays, and if I have to lose my job, I lose my job. That's not enough. The water is not going to be enough for you at that point. You got to get a hold of the wine, the juice of this neshama, of your soul, of your relationship with God. That's pretty hard, isn't it? Yeah. But then there's even harder, much harder. If someone threatens your life to be Jewish, like has happened throughout history, many times Jews have been under the threat of life, of the gun, of torture, if they would remain Jewish. Like in the Spanish Inquisition, Communist Russia, other places in the world, other times during our history. This has happened often, many times. How easy is that? Not at all. You're giving up your life to be a Jew. That's not enough to access your faith. Faith in God is not enough to get you to die for God. For that you need to access the yichida, the essence of the neshama. And that's the oil. In the second level, the Jew is squeezed a little bit. His tough boss is giving him a little squeeze. God's giving him a squeeze. Are you still Jewish? When you squeeze a Jew, some juice comes out. The wine comes out, and he remains Jewish. But there's sometimes the squeezing, it's not a squeeze, he's being crushed. A Yid is crushed. When a Yid is crushed, the oil comes out. The essence of the neshama comes out. And Jews have been crushed throughout history many times. Too many times. But we've stood by, we've remained loyal, the oil has poured out, and we've remained Jewish, and we gave up our life. We should never have to do that again. But that's what has happened to our grandfathers and great-grandfathers, for many of us. So those are the three levels of the neshama. Now, let's talk about the Greeks a little bit. The Greeks also have intellect, emotions, and actions. Right? They even have faith. The Greeks have faith. They believe in their things. They have their gods or whatever they believe in. So a Greek has the ability to mess up, to interfere with a Jew's actions, a Jew's emotions, a Jew's intellect. He can mess up his intellect, make him think like a Greek. He can make him feel like a Greek. He can make him act like a Greek. He can even mess up his faith. You know how you mess up a faith? I'll tell you how you mess up a faith. What is faith? We talked about it yesterday during the Kiddush, if you were there. What is faith? Faith means you believe in something that you can't really understand. Because that, if you could understand it, you don't have to believe. It makes sense to you. It's knowledge. That you know. It's something you have proof for it, or whatever it is. But faith is when you go beyond your intellect, beyond your rationale. It's super rational, right? But there could be faith that is really rational. There could be rational faith. I'll give you an example. If you have a teacher, there's a wonderful teacher. He teaches you everything always, and he always gives you good lessons, and you do research and you find out that he knows what he's talking about. His man knows what he's talking about, and you like this teacher. But then one time he gives you a lesson, and you ask him, teacher, I don't understand what you're saying. I don't get it. So he tells you, this may be a little bit too difficult for you, but trust me, this is the truth. I'm telling you that this is the truth. So do you have faith in this teacher? You're going to believe what he says? For the most part, you probably will. Why? Because he always does make sense. He always does say the right things. He always was right, so he's right this time also probably. The fact that you can't understand it is your deficiency, not his deficiency. You're not smart enough to understand this right now. Or ever. But he knows, he understands it. So you have faith in him and you accept. Is there some rationale between such acceptance? But for such acceptance? Yes, there is. There's a good reason why you have faith in this person. So the faith is an intellectual, rational faith. So that faith the Greeks also have. A Greek is not a person. In other words, what's a Greek? The Greek of that time, the Hellenist movement. They had no problem with Jews observing mitzvahs. They had a problem with a Jew keeping Shabbos. There was no problem with Shabbos. Shabbos is a nice thing. It was good for the family. It's good for yourself, your serenity. Rest up one day a week. Why not? They have their holidays, so you can have Pesach. They understand all that very nice. Jewish culture is a beautiful thing. They had no problem with that whatsoever. They even had no problem with Jewish faith. Because they have faith. Makes sense to believe. Everyone understands rationally that there's something beyond what you can understand. Your mind compels you to believe. Your intellect compels you to believe in something that's higher, because the intellect alone knows its limitations. So it tells you should believe in something higher. There is something beyond your intellect. In other words, your intellect is what's getting you to believe. It's not real faith. That's rational faith. That kind of faith the Greeks also had. Chaya they had. But faith that goes completely beyond rationale at all, total and utter acceptance of a faith that tells you you'll never understand it, not because you're deficient, but because this is not a rational thing at all. God is beyond rationale, period. He created all intellect. He created rationale. He created seichel. So he's not bound by it. If he wants you to put on film because, that's it. Not because of so-and-so, that one day you may understand or may not. But he at least has a reason. No. A Yid puts on film not because, I don't understand it, but God knows why, so I rely on him. A Yid puts on film not because God understands it, he puts on film because God wants it. And it's not because God understands why he wants it, because he doesn't understand why he wants it, because God is beyond intellect altogether. There is no rationale for it. He wants it because, and that's it. This is what makes him happy, for no reason. He's beyond reason at all. That type of faith is a very strange type of faith. It's real faith. That kind of faith the Greeks don't have. That's what we call the oil of the neshama. The essence of the oil of the neshama. Only a Yid can believe in such a concept, because his neshama is a part of Hashem. So he's connected to Hashem intrinsically. It is that part of the neshama that the Greeks could not access. They could not defile that. They could defile everything else because they have a counterpart. They could sit down with the Jew and say, your actions are a little bit too Jewish. Let me teach you really how to act. Okay, no problem. And many did. Many stopped observing Shabbos. Many stopped keeping kosher. They acted like Greeks. They even messed up our emotions. We loved Hashem, now we love theater. They got us to love the theater, and they got us to love who knows what. They messed up our intellect. We perceived godliness, now we started perceiving Greek culture, Greek ideas. And their faith they also can mess up, because they also have faith. You want a faith, but yeah, you can believe in something that's beyond your seichel, but not beyond seichel, period. Not beyond intellect. If there's no rational, even if the teacher doesn't understand why would you accept it? It's one thing if you don't understand, but at least the guy that's telling it to you should understand. A Yid says no. So that's the part of the neshama that a Greek could not ever access. Not because it's hidden under the ground. It's because he just doesn't have access to it. He doesn't know what it is. He doesn't have a language that, he just doesn't, you can defile something that you can relate to. If you can relate to something, you can mess it up, you can confuse it. Because you have the same thing, so you can overpower that person's same level. But when there's a level that you don't access at all, that you don't even have, that you don't relate to, there's no way you can touch that. So now let's get back to the Beis Hamikdash and all this business with the Greeks, what they did there. They defiled everything in the Beis Hamikdash. Everything got tummy. What didn't they defile? We learned that one little jar of oil that they could not touch. What? They didn't find it. So I asked before the question. Two questions I asked before. Why didn't they just pour out everything? The rest of the oil. Why didn't they pour out the oil? Why didn't they pour out the oil? Why didn't they just defile it? Just get rid of it. You don't want them to light the menorah. Just get rid of the whole oil. You won't have the problem. You won't have a problem. They won't be able to light the menorah. You defile it, which means it's still there. And halachically, we said they were allowed to use the defiled oil. If there's no other oil, halachically, you're allowed to. So what were the Greeks trying to accomplish? They wanted them not to light the menorah. They gave them every reason. They allowed it. They left it available for them to light it. And the second thing I asked is, why didn't they find the oil, that little bottle? Where was it? Only the Jews found it. The Greeks couldn't find it. The answer to these two questions will now be understood. What they didn't want to pour out the oil. They wanted Jews to light a menorah. They have no problem with Jewish observance. But they wanted it should be with the Greek touch. It should be with a Greek touch. Judaism should be observed with a Greek touch. What do I mean by a Greek touch? That's what they do. We don't want you not to observe Shabbos. We want you to observe Shabbos, but we'll touch your Shabbos. We'll influence your Shabbos. We'll influence your observance. Do it like we do. Like we do our Sabbaths or our holidays, whatever it is. Rationally understood. It makes sense. To bring the Jew into the Greek frame of mind. So the menorah is not the problem. The menorah is not the problem. It's the super rationality of the menorah that's the problem. It's the super rationality of the mizbeach that's the problem, of the altar. It's the super rationality of everything that's a problem to the Greek. So they don't have a problem with oil. They have a problem with pure oil. What's pure oil? Pure oil is the Yechidah. That absolute faith in Hashem that makes a Jew do things only because Hashem wants it, without any questions, reasons, anything. Doesn't have to make sense at any level. And I always give the example. When you come to a Thanksgiving dinner, remember this example I gave? You come to a Thanksgiving dinner, and what do Americans do on Thanksgiving? Well, we all know we eat turkey, right? You eat turkey and maybe some other things you do over there. So if someone walked in, you had any guests this year at your Thanksgiving dinner? Anyone had guests? You were guests. So let's say you have guests, yeah? And one of your guests comes in and you're serving turkey. And he asks you, what's this turkey? Oh, it's American observance, a story with the pilgrims, a whole big thing. You give him the whole long story. And that's why, for hundreds of years, we have engaged in the great mitzvah and observance of eating turkey on Thanksgiving. So someone, the guest asks you, so let me ask you a question. How much turkey do you have to eat in order to fulfill this obligation? Someone asked you such a question. I just asked the question. Every one of you broke out in laughter. Every one of you. You laughed. Why are you laughing? Because it's a silly question. The question doesn't make any sense at any level. It's a stupid question. What do you mean, how much? No, you do what you want. You eat a pulka, you eat a drumstick, you eat a thigh, whatever you want. A little tiny piece. You don't have to eat it at all. It's fine. Whatever you want. But if someone came to your Seder and you had the same 20 people, and the same nudnik asked you, how much matzah do you have to eat to fulfill the obligation? And first he asked you, what are we doing over here tonight? Well, the Jews, 30,000 years ago, they had the mice, the pilgrims, they came out, we eat, and we're eating matzah. They went out of Egypt, and they had matzah on their shoulders, that's all they did, they didn't leaven, the whole long story. And he asked you, okay, so how much do matzah you have to eat to do this right? Oh, you have to eat at least an ounce. Is the natural answer that you're going to give him. And no one's going to laugh. The question's going to make perfect sense. There's not going to be anything funny about that question and nothing funny about the answer. And if you eat, and the guy tells you, but I don't like matzah, so is it okay if I eat just a sliver less than an ounce? Is that okay too? What's your answer? Your answer is, if you're a cultural Jew, it shouldn't be a problem, but if you're a Jew that's fulfilling a mitzvah, it's a problem. It's as if you didn't do it. If Judaism is culture, then you eat a half a matzah, a third of a matzah, a tiny pea, whatever you want is okay. It's like turkey on Thanksgiving. But if you're doing this because God wants it, then you have to eat what He said God said you should eat an ounce. Really? Where did He say that? He said it to Moses at Sinai. He said an ounce. Yeah, he said an ounce. He said a kazayis. He didn't say an ounce. He said a kazayis, which is the same thing as an ounce in our modern measures. When you tell that to a non-Jew, a Greek, either he thinks you're completely out of your mind. No, that's probably what he would think, that you're probably out of your mind. And that's it. What's this business with an ounce of matzah? Like, what could be the reason for an ounce and not a sliver less than an ounce? Or how much wine do you have to put in each one of your cups of wine on Pesach? Well, that has to be 3.5 ounces. Really? Where does that say? God told it to Moses. You see where I'm going? You see what the oil is? That's the oil. None of this makes sense. The whole thing is not sensible. Nothing of this makes any sense. Why would God want to have an ounce? And not just under an ounce, or just more than an ounce. And you tell the guy, there's probably no reason. I don't think there is a reason. God doesn't have a reason for this. Oh, He must have a reason for it. No, you tell him, no, He doesn't have a reason for it, because God is beyond reason, period. He created reason. So then why does He want an ounce? Just because. That's why He wants. That's it. Because. Like your kid tells you, why'd you do this? Because. That's the way our relationship is with God. He tells us, we ask Him why, and He says because. There is no why. There's no why. On any level. On any mitzvah, by the way, you should know. There's no mitzvah that makes any sense at any level. Even the mitzvahs that we call rational mitzvahs, they are also not rational mitzvahs. I've proved that many times. Even the mitzvah against murder is not a rational mitzvah. You think you know why you're not allowed to murder. You think you know why you're not allowed to murder. Oh, well, it's not nice to take someone else's life. Who gives you the right to take someone else's life? On our level down here, in our world of intellect, that makes sense. But if you think about it, take the details of this mitzvah, you quickly find out that this mitzvah really doesn't make any sense. For example, a 95-year-old terminally ill patient that's suffering in bed and he wants you to pull the plug on him because he's suffering so much, and every doctor that has ever visited him said there's no way he's recovering and he's just a matter of time, and he's just going to be in misery till the last breath he takes. That could go on for another month or two, and you're the son of this person, Nebuch, and he's begging you, sonny boy, do me a favor, end this, I can't, I'm jumping from pain. Please end my life. And if you pull the plug, you consider it a murder, just like you took a gun and shot a 20-year-old robust individual. So you tell me if murder is a rational mitzvah or is not a rational mitzvah. There's nothing rational about any of our mitzvahs. You ask, why can't you take... Now the guy's begging you to take his life. What's the reason you're not allowed to take a life? It's not nice. It's not kind. You should be kind to people. You have to let them live. What happens if kindness demands to take life? Which it does sometimes. Sometimes the kindest thing to do is to end a life. That's a fact. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do is end the person's misery. If everyone says the person's not recovering, it's impossible, from a natural standpoint that this person can ever get up and live again any kind of quality life. The kindest thing to Terry Shivo, you remember that whole terrible debacle here in America? I mean, that's just one case. It goes on every day in every hospital in America. He can tell you. In every hospital, every day, there's such cases, I believe. I mean, I can't make a blanket statement like that, but it's thousands and thousands a year. And parents, and I get calls from kids. Oftentimes, Rabbi, what are we doing? Should we continue? Are we allowed to tell the doctors to stop? They begged me for a reason to give them an answer, give them a way out. And it's heart-wrenching. It's not easy. It's not an easy question. But what's the bottom line? The bottom line is that God likes life. Why does he like this? He likes such a life? Where a person is suffering terribly? Yeah. Why? Because it ends up with the same answer. There's no reason for it. There is no rationale on any level. God doesn't need to have a reason for it. He just wants it. The Greeks could not relate to such a concept at all. And most people can't relate to such an idea. But that's the part of the neshama they could never defile. So they wanted to defile every part of Judaism. Judaism, yes, but with a Greek touch. There should be some sense to it, which is the way everyone observes their laws and customs and culture. And why not that cruise? It's not that they didn't see it. It wasn't hidden under the ground. Maybe it was. I don't know exactly where they found that cruise of oil. But the point the Kabbalah is making of it is that's not that they had to look underground. If it would have been right there on the table, they wouldn't be able to touch it. Because that cruise represented the essence of the Neshama Yechida, and a Greek can't get to that. He can't, even if he tried. He has no access to that, because he doesn't have that counter level. So therefore, he couldn't, even if he wanted to. It could have been right there on the table, and they would leave it alone, because their eyes wouldn't have seen it. They don't have it. There's no way they can defile that oil. And that's the cruise that was found. In other words, when you see a Yid, and it looks like his behavior is Greek, his feelings are Greek, his perceptions are Greek, even his faith is like a Greek. Don't lose faith. The man has oil. Crush him. Get down to the bottom of it. You'll find it. That's a part that no Greek could ever get to. This is the part of the neshama that no one could defile. It's that cruise of oil that has the seal of the high priest. Every yid is sealed by the high priest, and you can't get to that. That essence, that yichida. Sometimes you have to go dig very deep to find it. And sometimes you have to give a little boom, a crush, a zetz, till it comes out. God does that to us all the time. We forget about him, so he reminds us that he exists. How does he remind us? Sometimes by giving us a little crush. And the oil starts pouring. And that's what it is. That's the oil that you can't defile that. You can't mess that up. The most distant Jew, if we can call a Jew distant, but the most, a strange Jew. It's like the relationship between a parent and a child. He could be a drug addict, he could be the worst child, he can be in prison, he can be giving his father nothing but sorrows. But if someone is threatening you and your child, you're going to put your head right in front of the child's head and take the bullet for the child. Because at those moments, it's not about nachas, it's about essence. And when the essence is threatened, you just watch what happens. That's what happened to many Yidden throughout history. They gave up their life to God. They gave up their life for God, even though on a regular day they were eating pork. Go figure that. Go understand that. That's what happened. It's not that they gave their life to God because they were very religious. They were very enthusiastic about Judaism. They weren't enthusiastic about Judaism. They didn't observe Judaism. But then they were crushed and the oil started pouring. There's a whole new Jew. It's a whole new reality. That's the story of Hanukkah. That's the Kabbalah of Chanukah. It's not about oil, lighting up oil to make a little light, because why did God make the miracle for the Jews? There was no need for this miracle, as I said. Halachically, they were allowed to use the defiled oil. So why couldn't they just use that oil? Why did there have to be this whole big miracle for 8 days till they went and crushed new olives and got new oil? Because what happened was that whole war, the whole thing that this little band of Jews got up to fight the Greeks, they were functioning from the Yechida standpoint. the Yechida started living. They weren't going to settle for anything less than Yechida. So they made up their mind that they're not using anything that the Greeks had any connection to. This was a fight against the Greeks. They're not using anything that had the Greek touch. Even though halachically allowed to, Yid goes sometimes beyond halacha. So God saw that and He provided the miracle. He didn't have to. There was no need. Halachically, there was no need. But when they were functioning on the Yechida level, then God also functioned on the Yechida level and gave them pure oil, made sure that they had the pure oil. So I want to wish you all a happy Hanukkah, and you should function on the Yechida level for these 8 days as much as you can. You shouldn't have to. You should. That's what Chassidus does. It reveals that level without being crushed, if that's even possible.
Thank
Brenda.
you so much.
Question.
Wow.